Let's begin. I'm a mounted patrol officer with LAPD. Was anyway. 23 years on the force, the last 8 with the mounted unit. My partner wasn't human. He was a 7-year-old Andalusian stallion named Bravo. Pure black coat, white star on his forehead, and nerves steadier than most recruits fresh out of the academy. I'd been assigned crowd control for what dispatch called a peaceful demonstration near Pershing Square. Environmental activists, from what I gathered. The kind of thing we handled monthly. People with signs, maybe some chanting, a few arrests if anyone got too rowdy. Bravo and I took position on South Hill Street around 9:30 a.m. The protest was smaller than expected. Maybe 200 people clustered around the metro entrance. College kids mostly, holding banners about climate change. Nothing unusual. Bravo stood patient beneath me, occasionally snorting at the pigeons that scattered between his hooves. That's when the radio chatter started getting weird. Unit 47 to dispatch, we've got reports of a disturbance at Union Station. Multiple injuries, requesting backup. I adjusted my earpiece. Union Station was only 6 blocks away. Through the static, I caught fragments of other conversations. Something about aggressive behavior and medical emergency. Standard stuff. But there was an edge to the voices I hadn't heard before. That tension cops get when something feels wrong. Bravo's ears swiveled forward. He'd noticed it too. Not the radio chatter, but something in the crowd. The protesters were getting restless, but not in the usual way. Instead of getting louder, they were getting quieter. Conversations dying mid-sentence. People checking their phones with increasingly worried expressions. A girl with purple hair near the front of the crowd suddenly pressed her phone to her ear. Whatever she heard made her face go white. She grabbed her friend's arm and started pulling him away from the metro entrance. Then another person got a call, then another. "Metro's shut down," someone shouted. "Something happened on the red line." That's when I saw him, a guy in a maintenance uniform stumbling up the metro stairs. At first I thought he was drunk or maybe having a medical episode. He moved wrong, like his joints weren't working properly. His right arm hung at an odd angle, and there was something dark staining the front of his coveralls. "Sir, you need medical attention," I called out, nudging Bravo closer. The man's head snapped up at my voice. His eyes were clouded, pupils dilated like he was in shock. But something about his expression, it wasn't confusion or pain. It was hunger. Raw, mindless hunger. Bravo tensed beneath me. Every muscle in his body went rigid, and his nostrils flared wide. Horses are prey animals. They can sense predators in ways humans can't. Whatever that maintenance worker had become, Bravo recognized it as a threat. The crowd began to scatter as more people emerged from the metro. They moved with the same jerky, unnatural gait. A woman in a business suit, her blouse torn and bloody. An elderly man whose glasses hung from one ear, his face slack but his movements purposeful. Then I heard the screaming from underground. Not the kind of screaming you hear at accidents. Sharp and panicked but brief. This was sustained, primal terror. The sound echoed up from the metro tunnels like something out of a nightmare. People started running. "All units, we have a major incident at Union Station," dispatch crackled through my radio. "Multiple casualties, unknown cause. Exercise extreme caution." The maintenance worker was closer now, maybe 30 feet away. He'd locked onto me, ignoring the fleeing protesters completely. His mouth hung open, and I could see his tongue lolling out like a dog's. But it was black, swollen. "Sir, stop right there," I commanded, reaching for my radio. "I need medical assistance on South Hill Street." He didn't stop. If anything, he moved faster, breaking into an awkward run. Bravo made a sound I'd never heard from him before, a deep, rumbling neigh that was almost a scream. The horse spun in place, wanting to run, but I held him steady. Training kicked in. I dismounted quickly, keeping Bravo's reins in my left hand while reaching for my service weapon with my right. "Sir, I need you to stop and get on the ground." The maintenance worker launched himself at me. I'd been in plenty of altercations during my career, but nothing like this. The man moved with absolute commitment. No self-preservation instinct at all. His fingernails, long and filthy, clawed at my uniform as he tried to bite my face. The smell hit me then. Decay mixed with something metallic and sour, like meat left in a hot car for days. Bravo reared up behind me, his front hooves striking the air inches from the attacker's head. The horse's intervention gave me the split second I needed to shove the man away and draw my weapon. "Stop, LAPD." He came at me again, mouth wide, making no sound except a wet grinding from his throat. I fired twice into his chest. The bullets punched through his coveralls, dark stains spreading across the fabric, but he didn't even slow down. That's when I knew something was fundamentally wrong. 23 years on the force, and I'd never seen someone take 2 center mass shots and keep coming. The man wasn't on drugs. Drugs don't make you immune to bullets. This was something else entirely. Bravo struck out with his front hooves, catching the attacker in the shoulder. The impact sent him spinning to the ground, but within seconds he was trying to get up again. His shoulder was obviously broken, hanging at an impossible angle, but he felt no pain. "Jesus Christ," I whispered, backing toward my horse. More screams erupted from the metro entrance. Then I saw her, a woman in torn scrubs, probably a nurse or medical technician, stumbling up the stairs. Half her face was gone, just ragged meat hanging from her skull. Behind her came others. Too many others. My radio exploded with chatter. "Officer down at Union Station. We need SWAT at Spring Street. Multiple suspects exhibiting extreme violent behavior." The protesters were in full panic now, running in every direction. A young man tripped and fell near the metro entrance. 2 of the things fell on him immediately. I heard his screams cut short with a wet tearing sound. I hauled myself back into the saddle. Bravo was ready to run, every instinct in his body screaming to get away from these predators. But there were civilians everywhere, and some of them were heading straight toward the infected. "Move! Everyone get back!" I shouted, spurring Bravo toward a group of protesters who hadn't realized the danger behind them. A businessman in an expensive suit was backing away from the metro, cell phone pressed to his ear, completely oblivious to the infected woman approaching from his left. She moved in that same horrible, jerky gait, arms outstretched, mouth agape. Bravo and I intercepted her just as she reached for the man. My baton caught her across the temple, a blow that should have dropped anyone. Instead, she spun toward me, her dead eyes focusing on the horse and rider above her. "Run!" I yelled at the businessman. He finally looked up from his phone, saw the woman's ruined face and sprinted away screaming. The infected woman grabbed at Bravo's leg. Her fingers were ice cold even through my pants, and they had surprising strength. Bravo wheeled and kicked, his rear hooves connecting with her chest. The impact launched her backward into a parked car with enough force to cave in the door. She got up again. That's when I understood. These weren't people anymore. They were something else wearing people's bodies. Something that didn't feel pain, didn't tire, didn't stop. The radio chatter was getting more frantic. "We've lost contact with Unit 23. Requesting immediate backup on Broadway. The suspects are... they're biting people." I looked around and realized the situation was deteriorating faster than anyone could control. The infected weren't just coming from the metro anymore. They were among the fleeing crowds. A protester I'd seen holding a sign 5 minutes earlier was now chasing a group of teenagers. His movements transformed into that same predatory shamble. Bravo danced beneath me, foam flecking his mouth from stress. His training as a police horse was the only thing keeping him from bolting. But even his iron discipline was starting to crack as more infected emerged from side streets and buildings. Then I heard gunshots, rapid, panicked firing from multiple weapons. The sound echoed off the downtown buildings, making it impossible to tell where it was coming from. But it was close. Too close. A patrol car screamed around the corner of Hill Street, lights flashing, siren wailing. It struck one of the infected head-on, sending the body flying 20 feet. The thing hit the pavement, rolled, and started getting up again. The patrol car screeched to a halt, and Officer Ray, a kid I'd trained with 2 years ago, jumped out with his weapon drawn. "What the hell is going on?" he shouted over the chaos. "They don't go down," I called back. "Bullets to the chest won't stop them." Ray looked at me like I was crazy, then watched as the infected man he'd just hit with his car stood up. Both legs were clearly broken, bones protruding through torn pants. But the thing began dragging itself toward the patrol car. "That's impossible," Ray breathed. A woman screamed behind us. I turned to see a young mother clutching a toddler while an infected postal worker advanced on them. The child was crying, and the sound seemed to agitate the infected man further. Bravo and I moved without conscious thought. 20 feet, 15, 10. I leaned low in the saddle and caught the infected man with my shoulder, knocking him away from the mother and child. The impact jarred my teeth, but it gave the woman time to run. The postal worker spun toward me with inhuman speed. His uniform was shredded, and I could see bite marks up and down his arms. Fresh bite marks. Whatever this infection was, it was spreading through contact. "Ma'am, get your child out of here," I shouted to the mother. She didn't need to be told twice. More screams, more gunshots. The smell of smoke as something caught fire a few blocks away. And underneath it all, that horrible wet sound of the infected feeding. Bravo's coat was slick with sweat now. His breathing labored from stress and exertion. We'd been at this for maybe 15 minutes, but it felt like hours. And I was starting to realize that this wasn't just a localized incident. This was bigger, much bigger. My radio crackled with a transmission that made my blood run cold. "All units. This is command. We're getting reports of similar incidents citywide. Repeat, citywide. Unknown contagion causing extreme aggressive behavior. Avoid direct contact with affected individuals. Military backup has been requested." Military backup. In 23 years as a cop, I'd never heard those words on a domestic call. I looked around at the chaos surrounding us. Burning cars, shattered storefronts, bodies in the street that weren't staying down. This wasn't crowd control anymore. This wasn't even policing. This was survival. The next 6 hours were hell on earth. By 10:45 a.m., downtown LA had transformed into a war zone. The infection spread faster than wildfire, turning ordinary people into mindless predators in minutes. I watched a hot dog vendor get pulled down by 3 infected tourists near Grand Central Market. When he stood up 30 seconds later, his eyes had that same clouded, hungry look. "All mounted units. This is Sergeant Williams," my radio crackled. "Regroup at MacArthur Park. We're establishing a defensive perimeter." I keyed my mic while Bravo and I moved through the chaos. "Williams, this is Officer Blake. I'm mobile with civilian refugees. What's our status?" Static. Then Williams' voice, strained and panicked. "Blake, get out of there now. The infection spreads through bite wounds. Command center is overrun. They're inside the building. I repeat, they're—" The transmission cut to screaming, then silence. Williams was gone. I looked at the group of survivors who'd been following us. An elderly priest named Father Nick, a construction worker called Pete with a bloody wrench, a mother clutching twin girls, office workers, students. Maybe 20 people total, all looking to me for answers I didn't have. "Where can we go?" Father Nick asked, his voice steady despite the chaos around us. I thought fast. MacArthur Park was compromised. The police stations would be overrun. Dodger Stadium. I heard Captain Ted on the radio earlier. They're establishing a safe zone there. "That's 12 miles through this," Pete said, gesturing at the infected streaming through the streets. "We stick together. We can make it," I said, though even I wasn't sure I believed it. The first 3 miles were a nightmare. We moved as a group through side streets, avoiding the main arteries where the infected congregated in massive hordes. Bravo's training kept him calm despite the constant stress, and his hooves rang against the asphalt as we navigated between abandoned cars and debris. Every few blocks brought new horrors. A family trapped in their overturned SUV, screaming as infected tore at the windows. A group of teenagers who'd barricaded themselves on a fire escape, only to watch helplessly as their makeshift barrier collapsed. We helped who we could, but there were too many trapped. Too many already turning. "They're learning," Pete observed after we'd been forced to detour around a group of infected that had somehow coordinated to block our path. "They're not just mindless anymore." He was right. I'd seen it too. The way they moved with purpose, the way they seemed to communicate through guttural sounds and gestures. They retained enough intelligence to set traps, to hunt in packs. We lost our first survivor at the intersection of Olympic and Grand. Lisa, a young office worker, stepped on a loose manhole cover that gave way beneath her weight. She fell into the storm drain below, her screams cut short by the wet sounds of feeding. We couldn't even recover her body. The tunnels were full of infected. By noon, we'd only covered 4 miles and were already exhausted. We found temporary shelter in an abandoned sporting goods store, the owner nowhere to be found, but the building secure enough to rest and plan our next move. "How much further?" asked one of the twin girls, the first words she'd spoken since we'd started this nightmare journey. I checked my map. About 8 miles, we're making progress. But the radio brought bad news. Emergency broadcasts were fragmenting, becoming less frequent. Reports of military units being overrun, safe zones falling, entire districts lost to the infection.